The vast majority of Americans believe that homosexuality is wrong.
Really? Where are you getting those facts?
They think gay marriage is not acceptable.
I'd really like to know where you're getting that evidence.
It's a little strange that he would need evidence for this, considering that some 30 states have put forward constitutional amendments banning homosexual marriage or civil unions. And in every single case, when the voters have had their say, they've passed, sometimes by 75 to 25% margins. Even the most liberal states like California have successfully passed bans on same-sex marriage. The only states, in fact, who have ever allowed homosexual marriage have done so because of activist courts that have forced acceptance of it against the will of the state's citizens. Now, if further statistical proof is required, there are plenty of polls to back this up. In fact, here are some long-running tracking polls from the Gallup organization. In this first poll, the question was, do you think marriages between same-sex couples should or should not be recognized by the law as valid, with the same rights as traditional marriages? The top bar represents those who think it should not be valid, and the bottom bar represents those who think they should be valid. And you can see clearly here, over the past 11 years, at no point have the majority of Americans said that homosexual marriage should be legal. Even on the question of whether homosexual relations should be legal, you can see that we've gone back and forth with our opinions on that over the past 30 years. So you can see that at some points, since 1977, people have thought that homosexual relations should be legal. At other times, the majority thought it shouldn't be legal. Even as recently as 2004, a poll showed that the majority of Americans felt that homosexual relations should be illegal, outlawed. And right now, the majority think it should be legal. But it's constantly going back and forth, and there isn't a clear trend in this poll. Now, even on just the question of the morality of homosexuality, we can see that clearly from 2001 until now, the majority have thought that homosexual relations are morally wrong. Now, it's not an overwhelming majority, I'll grant you that. And the most recent poll shows that it's roughly half and half. Half of the country believes that it's morally acceptable, the other half thinks it's morally wrong. But it's important to look at the wording of this poll. Morally wrong versus morally acceptable. The term morally acceptable is a much weaker statement. It's not asking the participants, is homosexuality morally wrong or morally right? It's just saying, is it morally wrong or morally acceptable? And more people are going to be willing to say something is acceptable, even though they may have reservations about it or think there's something wrong with it. They're more willing to say acceptable than to say that it's okay or right. You have to keep in mind the wording of this question. I've seen other polls that show still the majority of Americans do believe homosexuality is morally wrong.
To the point. You're a fucking bitch. You're a bitch that deserves to get owned, so that's what I did. I owned you. And it felt good. It felt good.
I fail to see how you've owned anyone but yourself in this video. You didn't address her actual arguments. Instead, you just criticized her presentation and relied on ad hominem attacks, faulty logic, and endless appeals to emotion.
You're in for a long life, lady. 'Cause your mentality is dying very quickly. Fuck off.
You seem to think that future acceptance of homosexuality is a foregone conclusion. Certainly it's more acceptable today than it was in the 1920s, but there are reasons to be skeptical about this trend continuing unabated. Various demographic characteristics serve as good predictors for one's stance on this issue, including race, age, and religion. African Americans and Latinos tend to be more against homosexuality in polling than white Americans. They also tend to have more children than white Americans. Religious Americans also tend to be more against homosexuality, and again, they also tend to have more children. Adults over 30 also tend to be more against homosexuality than younger people. A lot of people adopt a fairly liberal worldview when they're college age, but then when they get older and maybe get married and start a family, they begin to take on more socially conservative viewpoints. So, look, the jury is still out on exactly whose worldview will win here, yours or hers. You can make an argument either way, but only time will tell. This is Theologician, reminding you to analyze your presuppositions through the light of logic and reason.
Do not close your mind in the box of political correctness, but rather think freely and base your opinions on the firm grounds of evidential reality.